Echo 5, do you copy? Echo 5.
Echo 2, good morning. Nice of you to drop by.
Feeling alright, sir? Thought we lost you.
Right now, I feel like I can take on this whole podcast myself.
I know what you mean. Ready to send that transmission to Echo Base?
Yes, sir. R10, patch through.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Today we will be discussing Andor Episode 8. So a lot of cool things are happening in this episode, but before we get in, just guys remember to check down in the description below to see our link tree where we got our Discord, Instagram, and some of our cool shops that we got going on that you guys won't want to miss out on. However, this episode was very interesting. A lot going on in this episode, and lots of different story arcs.
Yeah, it was very much let's tie in everything again. And it was a weird one because I know we've had previous episodes where a certain British person that's here right now said were filler episodes, but this one felt more connected, and I think it's because of the last couple of episodes that we had. Now all the storylines, even though they're separate to Andor's story, they're all connecting and flowing.
Yeah, it's very interesting on that front, only for the reason that we got basically every character that we've been this first half of the season we had like the first 3 episodes as an arc. Then the next 3 were another arc that introduced other characters. And then within that, other arcs were going on within those arcs. And so now we got all these timelines that are working at the same time, building towards something. Because we get 2 characters that we're destined to meet finally got in there. Cyril, because he's causing a little bit of a ruckus at the headquarters there. And Deidre is not liking it.
Pain. Yeah, he's definitely being a pain.
But definitely get himself noticed.
It was just that one line of that Cyril said after being told you've contacted us 5 times, and he's like 6.
Yeah, I'm not counting this.
it just made me laugh because it's like, Cyril wants back in, and he wants to be seen.
He does, because he even says it that he's trying to redeem his name, and we kind of get a little bit more of his allegiance, and it seems he is very imperial minded because he's like, I'm after this guy. His name is Cassian. He started this thing here on Ferrix. He's like, and he may be a rebel. I don't know, but he left with a guy that I can't remember what he looks like, but I remember his voice. And these guys can be a threat to the Empire. And it's like, oh, here we go. Cyril's slowly becoming part of the Empire.
Yeah, which it's interesting because when we first see Cyril in this episode, his hair's sort of slicked back and he's prim and proper, wearing the same uniform as everyone else, but he gets emotional in it. He's like, I'm good at what I do. And
yeah, he's like, this just happened. He's like, things happen so quickly, there's no control over it.
Which is it resonates in the way that obviously people within the Empire are also noticing the same thing and are trying to act on it. So it's kind of the two stories are merging together.
Yeah, because it seemed like Cyril is moving into Miro's storyline now. And so I feel like those two are going to be connected now, because she does have a couple scenes by herself in this episode where she's with the ISB and she brings up some of the stuff that Cyril is talking about. Because like you mentioned, they are starting to notice. And I found that whole meeting very interesting because she brings up the stolen Imperial, the Starpath unit thing. Yeah, so she brings up the Starpath unit, and they're like, okay, yeah, what about it? She's like, well, Ferrix doesn't have a lot of authority. We need to step down on it. They're like, well, it's like that's going to be very expensive. And she's like, it's a lot cheaper than stolen Imperial technology. She's like, that'll be a fraction of the price. It's like these things will keep happening if we don't really show our full strength.
Which, for me, it goes to show the blindness of the Empire's higher ups, that they can't see the same issues that people like Mira can.
And it's because they're not looking for it. It's like, yes, they are part of the ISB, but it's not their job to monitor every little thing. And they're just so busy that they're not actually noticing it. Because she even, her boss, I forget his name, Partagas, he even backs her up and says, hey, there's been a lot of activities that are being spread around the galaxy. And it's something that we need to look at. And she describes the events on Ferrix as their first mistake, or Axis, which I think is the name of the rebels that they're giving them, or I'm not sure what they were referencing on that.
I thought Axis was the code name for Luthen that the
no, you're right.
Given, because they obviously don't know who he is. They just know him as this entity that exists in some capacity and is quite high up in rebel affairs.
Yeah, that's right. So so they're saying his first mistake was there on Ferrix when he went to meet Cassian. Because if he didn't go there to meet Cassian, all these events probably would be they'd probably still be under the radar, and they wouldn't have been able to connect Aldhani to him, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it does. It draws people into the rest of the story now, because obviously the Andor, the Cassian side, we know what's going to happen with him, in the way that, the last episode ended with him being sentenced to a rather long time in a prison. But it's the other characters and how they're interacting and trying to deal with situations that Cassian's caused that is now more forefront.
That is true, because doesn't he? Because they talked to him about it, and he's like, I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're asking him, they're like, well, why'd you end up in prison? He's like, nothing. And so let's see.
I mean, technically,
okay,
he was right when he said he did nothing this time.
This time, yeah. And it's funny because of him, and they don't know about it yet, but because of him, their sentences got doubled.
Yeah.
Because of Aldhani.
It was it was interesting to see that side of things as well, how the prisoners sentences did get affected by the effects of Cassian's actions.
Yeah, which is really interesting. It's like, why would they be held accountable for a bunch of rebel activity? And I'm curious of like what these guys did to get stuck in. I mean, the Empire really doesn't need any reason; they just make up excuses anyways. But
you are correct, actually, and that does raise a question as to why were their sentences increased, because they're not going to be able to rob a military installation from inside a prison. So why are they the ones that are being so harshly attacked in a way?
I'm assuming because they lost so much money in work that they need to catch up to what they lost. I'm not exactly sure if this prison has any correlation to the airbase, but because they are building what, like engines and stuff.
That they are building. It looks like they're building parts for something.
Yeah, because I remember because I heard them talking about like, all right, Keith, you're gonna what you call it? You're gonna fry. And I'm assuming that I missed what they meant by fry. I don't know if that had anything to do with the actual device, or if that was they're gonna get fried off the floor because of the technology if they're not working.
So I kind of read that or looked into that as a bit of both, but in a sort of symmetrical sort of way, in the way that you don't work hard enough, you get fried. You step out of line, you get fried. You try to escape, you get fried. So one way or another, it's going to end with getting fried. So I mean that's just my interpretation, and I think that's why I really enjoyed this episode, because there's a lot of it is just open to interpretation at this point. It's the first prison episode that we've had.
And the funny thing is, they didn't call it a prison.
Yeah.
Because I thought the whole introduction with the officer coming in, he's like, yeah, you're probably wondering why we don't really have any weapons. This is the reason why. And it seemed like a little gravitational pull, and the guards have like these special boots that protect them from it. And then you have them saying, okay, if you guys have been incarcerated before, you're not going to be used to this clean and sterile environment and all this leisure, not being overwatched so much by the guards. You're going to have a little bit of supervision, but it's not going to be heavy like you're probably used to. And so this whole facility seemed very, very interesting.
Yeah. It kind of made me think of how the Empire was in the original trilogies, you know, the cleanliness of everything, but with its flaws, and that's kind of where we're leading up to now. You know, we know that the Empire's a bigger thing than it used to be, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and you know, and these prisoners are now not being called prisoners. For some, it kind of, for me, felt like a bit of dignity was trying to be kept, while knowing that, you know, they're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it this way. So if you give a prisoner and you tell them, okay, you're going to be working, you're going to be building this, they're not going to be as motivated or putting their all into it, because they're like, oh, I'm just a prisoner here. And while these guys are prisoners, they are kind of like, okay, well, you're working off your debt, so the better you work, maybe we'll cut it down. Even though you know the Empire's not going to do that. They just doubled everybody's sentence. They're not going to do it out of the kindness. Going, oh yeah, you're working extra hard, or you're doing good behavior, so you're going to be let out. Empire doesn't think that way.
Yeah, and I think that the one sort of motivational factor for the non-prisoners is if their table doesn't do well enough during their shift, again, they get fried. If the floor, if I remember properly, if the floor doesn't do well enough, well, I can't remember the time span that they gave for that one, but it was like if the floor shift doesn't do well enough, the whole floor.
I know it's 12-hour shifts, and so they have to be as productive in 12 hours. And so whoever's the top performer gets, I guess, a thumbs up or something. I can't remember what motivation they had to be top performers.
I know one of the rewards, because I remember it well, was food that actually tasted like food.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Instead of whatever it was that they were forced to eat.
Yeah, their cell block was so interesting. Again, just another completely white room, which looked like there's no dust whatsoever. And then they have like these tiny cells, and it looks like that bed didn't even look comfortable. It looked like it was just a flat surface, not even any cushioning.
Yeah. But that's quite, to me, that's kind of how a lot of prison cells would seem to look. I mean, if
yeah, that is fair.
How they're portrayed in other shows, it can literally be anything, but it's normally like, you've got the bars, and then you've got that small window with the bars going across it, and you've got just a slab of metal that's your bed, and maybe you get thrown an old pillow.
Yeah, that is true. And this is a lot cleaner than other places, though, for sure.
Yeah, but it kind of felt like, kind of like that it was a stereotypical prison scene, but just set in a clinical environment.
That is true, except the tubed food and water. Ugh. Like, I don't know if I mean, you kind of would have to do that, like, because the guy, I think, what was his name? He was Jembok.
Yes.
He was talking to Andor. He's like, yeah, it's not the most desirable thing, and you'll learn to eat it. It's like, you may spit it away now, but I'm like, you're gonna get hungry enough that you're not gonna care. You're just gonna want food. And it's gonna give you the energy you need.
An interesting point on that one is when we have that little time skip where we see that Andor's actually starting to eat that stuff. But he does look, I don't know whether it was the lighting or how the makeup was done, but he does look thinner. I don't know if you picked up on that or not.
I actually didn't.
It's worth a rewatch just for that part, because, like I said, it could just be how the scene was lit, but he did look thinner and less. He had less color in his face as well, which,
that is true.
You can kind of get from not eating for a while.
Yeah, and that's very, like we've always said in every episode, they do pay attention to detail, and so that is actually a very important detail. If somebody is not eating the way that they normally do, and they're in a new environment where they're eating less, or the food isn't as, I want to say, nourishing, you're gonna see a change in their overall health and look. So that's a very interesting point that they did. I'm gonna have to go back to check that out.
Yeah, it was so well done that, I mean, I'm doubting myself on it now because I'm not 100% sure what it was, but it just looked like that's kind of what they was hinting at, especially with it being sort of a slight time skip.
Mm-hmm. Or it could have just been lighting.
Yeah.
That's right. I think we mentioned this, that we want to bring this to, like, this whole prison facility is a kind of a nod reference to what we're talking about in one of the previous episodes, how they're doing the THX 1138.
Yep.
And so this was one of the designs that were for the movie, and so they brought it into here.
So it's a good involvement in that and a good Easter egg. But then this episode again was sort of full of Easter eggs.
Yeah, because we had Snoke's first appearance.
Yep. Yeah.
Good old Andy Serkis. I forgot his name. It was Coda, right? Or started with a K. I know that. Kino.
Kino, yeah.
Kino, yeah, because he was the warden of the facility, and it's kind of interesting that they have different roles there. It's like, do you have to be there a certain amount of time to become this kind of warden on your level, or is it your performance that gets you there?
Yeah. See, again, it just raises questions for me as to how the hierarchy there works within the prisoners themselves, because it's not mentioned how he got to be at that level. But then, was it because he had the most days of a sentence and he's worked the hardest, or did he do some adult things with some of the guards? Sorry, that's terrible.
Hey, you never know.
But it's a prison environment, and again, sort of, if you look at how other prison shows are, on TV and in film, things like that do happen for people to be deemed as being safe.
Yeah, maybe he kind of asserted his authority and he, like, beat the toughest guy there, so he becomes top dog.
Yeah.
And it seems like that would be something that Empire would condone. I mean, that's essentially what they did.
Yeah.
On a grander scale.
But they don't call it that.
No, definitely not.
But no, I mean, it was actually quite good to see Andy Serkis as a human. Not, because Andy Serkis is well known for being Gollum in Lord of the Rings.
He was actually the first live action. Wait, no, never mind. Just kidding. That was the guy that played Jar Jar. He was the first whatchamacallit, CGI character, and then Gollum shortly after.
Yes. Yeah. So Andy
Ahmed Best. There you go. That's his name.
That's, how could we forget that? I mean, that's a whole other story for him,
Oh yeah.
Poor guy. Yeah, so Andy Serkis, he's well known for being Gollum in Lord of the Rings. He did the mocap for King Kong. Obviously, Snoke, which again was CGI. So it was good to have him as him without any, without the CGI dots on his face.
Yeah, because after Snoke, he's actually been starting to do a lot more live action roles.
Yeah, I mean,
because he played a part in Marvel as well.
Yes, he was Claw in
Yeah.
Age of Ultron and Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
Which, it's good that he's kind of, I say getting out there, but he did a fair amount of British films where it was him, but because they weren't as high profile, they've kind of gone under the radar. So now to be in a major property again as a human, it was good.
And playing an essential role too.
Yeah.
And I just looked it up, but the time skip was 30 shifts.
So 30 days of not really. I'm guessing not really eating much.
Not to mention they are working pretty hard, like 12-hour shifts every day.
Yeah. No, I've done 12-hour shifts, and I did those for 5 days a week. That was bad enough with having 2 days off. This is.
But imagine 30 days in a row,
non-stop. Because I'm guessing that they also don't have breaks.
I wouldn't imagine, because I know Andor took a break for a second, and Kino started getting on everybody. He's like, no breaks. He's like, we got a shot at being top level today, so no breaks.
It does show how tight a thing Kino's trying to run his floor. Which again, it does make me wonder how he got to that position.
Definitely thinking alpha
yeah,
challenge.
Yeah. There's got to have been some sort of fight about it, or assertion of dominance. Because you've got the old guy on Andor's table. He could have easily been,
Oh, Uli.
Yes. Yeah, he could have easily been the floor manager there, but obviously he's too frail and not. So it does make me wonder what happened there. See, this is what I love about Andor as a series. It's making me want to know more about characters that I would not normally care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. They're doing really good about doing the character development, and that's one of like my biggest things about most productions. Not even just Star Wars, like just most productions. Like a lot of it's just action based and nonstop explosions and all this, and this show is actually taking time, introducing interesting characters, and the actors they chose. So I'm going to say the casting was well done, because all the characters steal their lines. Like when they talk, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is really good," and then the next person talks, I'm like, "He's really good," and so it's overall a good chemistry on the set.
Yeah, and just to add a sort of a final thought on that front, when they're introducing a character, they don't go over the top with it. It's it's the introduction, and then they kind of just let it subtly play out. It's not like this is the character, now we're going to shove it down your throat for half an hour.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because there is a little bit of backstory on one of the other characters that he's with. And I'm reading it a little bit. He's got a whole Wikipedia page on it. And he's one of the guys at his table. It was his name is Ruscott Milchi. And I guess after this, him and Cassian stay in contact, because it mentions that he joined the Alliance to restore the Republic and its special forces during the early years of the Galactic Civil War against the Empire. And then he and Andor, who had since become an Alliance intelligence captain, continued to be friends. And So then it says Melshi led a rebel extraction team during the rescue of Jyn Erso, the daughter of Galen Erso.
I thought I recognized him, and I couldn't figure out where from. And
Rogue One.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. They didn't really. I mean, I guess they can't really allude to that in the show because they're just now meeting for the first time. But it's really cool that they plant stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, we're watching Rogue One, bunch of characters, so now it kind of ties a little bit more meaning to Rogue One when you see this character again.
Yeah.
And so it's not Andor that's getting the origin story.
Yeah, it's kind of everybody that's involved in it is having their origin stories that will lead to Rogue One. It is a strange. It's hard to explain like how this series has managed to draw people in to these random bunch of characters that, you know, like I say, you wouldn't really care about, and give them backstories and everything that then stick with you. It's kind of, it's got the feel of A New Hope, where you had, you know, the backstory of Luke and partially of Leia, and you know, you kind of knew something about Han eventually, but then, you know, they became household names.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, especially with those characters. Like Luke was a farm boy, Leia was captured by the Empire, and then Han was just some smuggler, and then Obi-Wan was some crazy old religious guy with a laser sword. And they're kind of implementing that same story style back into the series. Because I remember when the sequels came out, like we knew it was a trilogy, but people still complained. It's like Snoke was introduced. Like, well, why didn't they give us any backstory on Snoke? I'm like, because they're gonna do that in the next two movies. I'm like, they introduced enough for us to know who he is and his place in their First Order. It's like we'll get all the other stuff later.
But that's exactly the right point as well, is that you're asking about it, aren't you? You want to know who, like, the backstory of this character. And I think that's where Andor has gone, it's done the right thing in when introducing the characters. You get that little bit of a backstory, and then you find out more potentially, you know, as the series goes on.
Yeah, and so it's really cool that we get this character that's from Rogue One brought into here.
Speaking of Rogue One characters, though, Saw Gerrera is back.
Yes, Saw Gerrera.
I had to throw that one in there just because it was perfect timing. But he's back again, and Luthen meets up with him.
Yeah, I found that whole interaction interesting.
Yeah, because there was a lot of denial from Luthen. He was like, you know, did you do that? And he was like, did you do that?
Like I said last episode, Luthen is pulling some Saw Gerrera style moves, even though he's not on the front line. He's still doing things that are questioned.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of foreshadowing there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and now he's trying to recruit him.
Yeah, that was. I mean, I do enjoy the Saw Gerrera arcs that we've seen in, you know, because we've had him in animated version right up until Rogue One, and I mean, I just love the fact that he's back in it again.
Yeah, even though he's not like a big part of, a big part of the whole series, but it's cool that we get to see that the rebellion does have contact with Saw Gerrera, even though he doesn't want to do things their way. Because Mon Mothma doesn't like his ways.
Yeah.
But Luthen's like, we kind of need you.
Yeah, you're a bit of a potential extremist, but maybe that's what we need.
Yeah, because he's trying to recruit him because they mentioned a character named Krieger, and Saw Gerrera doesn't really have much taste for this guy.
Yeah.
He's like, he was a separatist. He's like, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I know, because like Luthen was trying to sell him these targeting deflectors and drive adapters, and Gerrera's like, well, how much do you want from him? He's like, well, if you go meet with Krieger, you get him for free. He's like, heck no, I'm definitely not doing that. But it's interesting that Luthen is trying to pull everybody together. And that's where he kind of differs from Saw a little bit, is that he sees that they need to work together as a team to be able to pull down the Empire. If there's like all these different rebel cells all over the place, it's like, yeah, it's going to cause annoyance, but there's no coordination.
Yeah.
And then just one more point back to the prison, because I found this really fascinating. For a lot of people that love the Old Republic, I wanted to mention that when you're going through the prison, you see like all these underground stuff, because they're literally, the whole base is surrounded by water, and so there's no land, and so the facility must go really deep if it's gonna be hitting the floor of an ocean.
Yeah.
And they're kind of referencing this because in the Old Republic and some of the other books, the Children of the Jedi, it was a prison world called Basalvis, and it used to be part of the Rakata Empire. And so they had turned Basalvis into a massive underground prison that had a lot of complexes like this, and it was mainly to hold like Force users. And so it's kind of cool that they're bringing this into live action. Like, a lot of people are saying Disney is ignoring a lot of Legends, but almost every episode it's like, no, they brought this into live action, or they might not be doing it this way, but here they're doing it this way, which is really cool.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that people say that Disney are ignoring the Legends stuff, because I think Legends stuff is great if you want to discount, say, like the sequel trilogy, and you want to read a different path, or think of it as like the way I think of it is like an alternate timeline. Which that in itself is, I think that's the best way to think of it. And it's like when J.J. Abrams did the Star Trek reboot movie, that was set in an alternate timeline using the sort of the same characters, but that worked because you've got the original run coinciding with this, and it's the same thing. You can have the sequel movies and the Legend stuff, and yeah, you can pick and choose bits from each and combine them, which is kind of like, say, what Disney have done. You don't need to necessarily have a lot of the other bits of Legends stuff, like Chewie's death, but you can have.
They need to do that though.
I'm on the fence about it. I really am, because
hey, they did it in the books, but I don't think they're going to do it though, just because they brought on the new actor to honor the suit, and I don't think they're going to take him out that quickly.
Yeah, I would hope that they don't, just because the whole, if I remember it, like the whole thing was Han was still alive, I think, in that
He
book.
was, yeah.
Yeah. So if Disney
it was his youngest son,
yeah, which again
that died with him.
So that kind of whole storyline is out of the window unless
there's potential in the Rey movie.
Yeah.
He could still be the Rey at this point because Han's gone, Leia's is gone, and Ben Solo is no more. Not that I would think that he'd go to Ben Solo or forgive him for killing Han. That'd be a very interesting interaction if Ben Solo didn't die after his odd, unexpected kiss with Rey.
Oh, the least said about that, the best. that can be for a whole other thing. But
yeah, so it'd be very interesting to see those characters, but I do digress.
Yeah, I do love the subtle nods to the Legends material in Andor, and that's all it needs to be, because then everybody has imaginations. They can make up backstories and everything for the reasons why there are things there that there are.
Mm-hmm. It's a cool way to honor fans.
Yeah.
Especially like even like bringing stuff into real life, because I know we get a shot at Luthen's shop again, and he's got a fossil of Orthcereus, and which is something that's brought from the real world. It's a cephalopod from the Baltic Sea. It's about 460 million years old, and so it's cool that they kind of, it's like, okay, here's another creature. We'll kind of tie it into real life too. So they're doing like a lot of cool nods.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to one of the earlier episodes that we did, where you could have, it was very parallel to real world events. And I do love that subtle inclusion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think now we've got to talk about Ferrix and what is going on there.
Well, we'll get to that. Let's just knock Mon Mothma out of the way real quick, because her story arc's a little short, but very interesting on some things that are going on there. So it's very interesting because like we're talking about how all these things are going on, and in the last episode we saw Mon Mothma at a dinner party, and so here again we get to see her interacting with Tate. Can't remember his name.
Yes,
really bad with names.
Yeah, names are fine, but yeah, it's another interaction. I mean,
Tay. His name is Tay Kolma. There we go. Just looked it up.
I mean, to start with the drinks that she's having with her husband, and the bartender was going to put some, what was that thing he was going to put in her drink, and she was like, oh no, I can't actually stand it. And her husband was like, you used to like it. And she was like, I used to be good at faking things, or to paraphrase it. But it was very much we can sort of see now, or it came across to me that interaction alone started to show the mask was slipping.
Yeah.
She's very good at hiding things and pretending that everything's okay.
Yeah, because what was it? A character named Bertha was talking about. So yeah. Mothma she's trying to save the Empire from the Emperor. Even though she's good at hiding things, she's kind of, and I think that's why she needs to involve Tay a little bit, is because people are seeing that she's being a little too upfront about her intentions.
Yeah.
And especially at those type of parties, like we can kind of see that they are amongst a very diverse crowd. So imagine like going to a political party and you got all these Republicans and Democrats from America in there, and everybody's got their own views. And that's kind of how it is here. You got a bunch of political parties here, and Mothma is trying to find allies that can take down the Emperor. But it's very interesting to see the discussion that they had there, because one, some people see the Emperor as a good guy. They're like, oh yeah, the Emperor, he's trying to protect the galaxy. And Mothma retorts with, okay, well, how much protection is too much? And then they went bantered back and was like, well, we've seen what too little does.
Yes, again, that's another interesting point, and again, another tie-in with sort of real-world events, like you said, the political parties that are all there and discussing things and seeing the different views of the different people, and the question is correct, that how much protection is too much, because obviously that's what the Empire is trying to show that they're doing, is protecting people. The Jedi were meant to be the peacekeepers, but
they became too political.
Yeah, and they had to be stopped. And how do you stop people like that? You eradicate them.
And you go, hey, we're doing it for the good of the galaxy. We don't need the Jedi.
Yeah, we're one unified people under one banner,
and we are here to save you from yourself. So we're going to create new laws. Especially Tay, he notices, he's like, the new banking laws that the Empire is throwing out is messing with their operations. And I did like the little comment that he made to Kolma, because he's walking away. He's like, well, all right, you guys did the whole charity thing. I'm going to go over here. And Tay is like, well, charity starts at home. And Kolma just kind of turns around and looks at him, gives him like a dirty look, and he keeps going. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah. See, again, that I kind of want to know more about why he said it the way he did. Like, what does he know, or how much does he know? There's so many questions on this, and this is what I like. It's
I'm assuming because of the time jump. So I didn't think that they really wanted to write a whole dialogue to bore us with Mon Mothma meeting him again to try and convince him again. So I think they just led with their first conversation. Now time has passed. We can tell that he's working with her now. And Kolma probably has a little irritation because she's probably spending more time with them, because they're trying to do things that don't need to be heard by other people. And that little jab kind of makes it sound like she's telling him a little too much, and Kolma's like, I don't like this guy. Kind of becomes a jealous husband.
That is true. Yeah, I didn't think of it like that.
Yeah, because I know it happened to one of my friends. He had a girlfriend, and she had a friend that was a guy that he was the person that she complained about their relationship to, and caused a lot of issues. And I'm kind of assuming this is kind of similar to that.
It would make sense, really. Having this random sort of childhood friend of your wife's, just suddenly being in her life a lot again. Yeah, no, that does make more sense, actually. Yeah, did not think of it in that sort of way.
Yeah, that's just how I took it. Just a little relationship squabble. And so it's very interesting. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that we had that sort of brief interaction with Mon Mothma's daughter again.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what the point of her character is, to be honest. I don't really find her interactions in this episode or last episode, even the first introduction. Maybe the first introduction, just like, oh yeah, she's got a husband and a daughter, and
Yeah.
now we got these 2 times, and it's like, Mom, can I leave the party? Yeah. And then she comes up again, and then she's like, oh, go find her father. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it doesn't add. It doesn't add much or anything to the story. It's just it's kind of like filling in that extra bit of backstory about Mon Mothma that, again, we didn't really need or ask for.
Or she's trying to have a conversation with Tay, and it's showing that she's at the party, and it's really hard to talk because of constant interruptions.
True, and
But I mean, unnecessary. My point, still, I think.
I think maybe just on that one though, and I might be looking into this way too much now, but the way that she so quickly dismisses her daughter, maybe she doesn't trust her either. Maybe she thinks that if she says too much and her daughter can hear, she's going to
Might
tell her dad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
because when she was first introduced, they did kind of show that the daughter had a little bit more loyalty to the father because she was mouthing off to Mothma at the table.
Yeah. So maybe that is just her whole purpose in this series, is to raise the questions of whose side would she be on, which is something that we've said as well. We don't know what happens to her, and we don't know why.
Very interesting indeed. So, I mean, that was a cool little arc that they gave Mothma on this one, because it's showing that a lot of the things are tying together. So we've got Mothma building the rebellion. We got Luthen trying to coerce everybody together, and Cassian's just doing his thing in prison. And then we got all this crazy stuff that's happening on Ferrix.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit last episode on something sparking a certain character to do something.
Yes.
And we're getting a little bit more on that storyline, which is probably going to build up to the finale, I would assume.
Yeah. Oh man, it's like, where do we start with this one? There's so many.
Aldhani's making a lot of waves.
Yeah.
And the Empire is becoming more noticed, and people are not liking it.
No, so we've got Cass's mum,
Marva.
Yeah, Marva. She's not looking too well. She's old, so that's probably it. But she's still out.
Well, at least she's got a hobby. She's observing hotels.
Yeah, and trying to cause trouble.
Just a little bit.
But I mean, it's fair play. She kind of made her view on it very apparent in the last episode, that she's a rebel. She's not going to stop, and it was kind of proven in this episode that she didn't stop and collapsed. I believe that's why she was kind of
her health is kind of failing,
and Bix was there looking after her.
And it's kind of funny. I wonder if she was kind of looking at her like, oh, she's just a crazy old woman. Like, because I don't think Bix is really looking at the Empire the way that Marva is. Because the way that she addressed it, she's like, yeah, I probably should be here a lot more. Otherwise, she's going to be roaming the streets, causing trouble again. It's like, we got her this time, but
what if next time, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
so she's like, no, good.
No, I was just going to say on Bix, her costume choice for this episode.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Her jacket is very reminiscent of the one that Luke wears at the end of Yavin for the medal ceremony.
That is very true. It's really cool. Again, another subtle Easter egg. Love it. and she's just wearing it casually through the streets. Supposed to be like a really nice ceremonial jacket, but nah, she just wears it in the street. Just another day. It's like, it looks good with my outfit. Oh, and very briefly, so now we know another character is also there on Ferrix. I believe they're on Ferrix.
Yeah.
Vel and Kaz.
Yes.
And so I know they're still trying to hunt down Cassian, and I think they tied her to either Bix or Marva, just probably because Luthen sent them that way.
I think it was Marva more than
Bix.
Yeah. But
That's true, because in one of Luthen's scenes, because she tries to contact him, and his assistant's like, nope, we need to cut ties there. Tell me to close the connection. She's like, the Empire's there. They can be listening in. They can be doing all this. We need to do it. And he's like, oh, while Cassian's out there knowing who I am and knowing all about this, I can't have that.
Yeah.
And so they would definitely be more after Bix.
Yeah, that whole arc it's a really interesting one, and again, it's drawn me into it because it's so sort of left field that Vel, she kind of got forced to have Cass on her team. Cass then left with his share only, and they're making it out like they're gonna try and kill him. It's like it does not make sense to why, unless that was always going to be the plan.
I think the original plan was to bring Cassian part of the rebellion, because Luthen saw him as valuable. And if Cassian didn't go down there as a mercenary and totally on board with Luthen, he probably would have gone with Vel and everybody back to Luthen. But because he kind of just went there, it's like, oh, I'm just getting the money and now I'm leaving. He becomes more of a loose end at that point. Because we don't know if he's going to say anything. We know he's not, because he would have said it already.
Yeah.
And he's changing his name everywhere he goes. So he's a little bit more loyal to the rebellion more than Luthen thinks. And maybe more than Cassian thinks. But Cassian's like, ain't no snitch. And he doesn't even know that they're trying to kill him.
Yeah.
Which is the funny part.
Poor guy. Does not catch a break, does he?
No, because even one of his cellmates commits suicide. And causes more problems.
Yeah. It's a strange arc, like I said, that they've got, and because Vel was very emotional as well in this, in the few scenes that we had with her. She was like, I want to stay. This is bigger than us, and it's like, yeah, but there's a room for rent, and it's like it'll be too suspicious. And as she's going away, she looks kind of tearful.
Yeah, because I think they're kind of an item there, and so Kaz wants to do one thing, but Vel is choosing something over her.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have to go separate ways is kind of something that would probably make her really tearful. But when you say interesting arcs that are going on, Bix is a very interesting character too, because she's getting pulled into it firsthand. And pretty much she looked at Marva like she was crazy. Yeah, so she pretty much looked at Marva like she was crazy. She's like, oh yeah, Marva's looking at this hotel. Did she think there's something going on? crazy old lady, whatever. And now they're in front of this hotel, and there's a huge crowd going there, and this one kid is making a ruckus going, "Hey, my dad went in there. He hasn't come out. Where is he? I want to know." And then Empire's like, calm down. They detain him. And then now the ISB is very interested in Cassian because of Cyril. Now it's being tied to Bix because she's friends. And so why they expected her to be there and call out her name without knowing exactly what she looks like firsthand was a very interesting thing.
Yeah, Bix is another character that just can't get a break.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, it was another. I mean, that whole scene was quite a lot to process, because you've got Bix there, and she's been called out by the ISB agents that are there now, and so she starts running and is being chased after, and then that kind of she gets caught, because she's going to get caught. We could all see it coming, and
I was kind of hoping she wouldn't, though. I was rooting for her.
I was hoping that she wouldn't, but I knew that something would happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was either going to be she was going to get shot, shot and killed, or captured.
Nah, she got information. They probably would have done a Leia move. Set your guns to stun.
And then we go in. We're actually then inside the hotel, and they're saying that they've got Bix, and we see the kid's dad.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because before Bix is taken in there, Mira is like, "Nah, leave him in here because I want her to see him." And the moment that she brings him in and Bix sees her dad, she's like, "What are you guys doing? I told you to take him out." Very interesting. It was a very mental game that she's playing with Bix at this point.
Which is strange, because the two have never interacted before. So why put on that show unless it was to show that it was obvious, that the father was being tortured?
I think it's more of the fact, like, okay, leave the father in here, show him that we're torturing him. So when she sees him in there, we start asking questions. She'll remember what happened to him, and they can use that as kind of a fear tactic.
But she wants to be seen as being the good guy in all of this, in the way that, I told you to get him out. What are you doing? So if anything does happen, she can play somewhat innocence on it.
Yeah, because some big soldier comes in right after, then pushes her towards the chair, and that's probably what's going to happen.
Yep.
And then it jumps back to Cassian and his crew just sitting there assembling machinery, completely oblivious of everything else that's going on in the galaxy.
I mean, for me, this episode was, to be honest, I don't know how to explain this episode or describe it. How it made me feel.
It was a very good episode to progress everything going on. So we got Cassian, he's sitting here serving his time, and all this stuff is going on in the facility, and you can kind of see the gears working in his head. Like, he's like, I got to get out of here. And then now you've got a spark of a rebellion kind of igniting some fires on Ferrix. And especially with Vel and Kaz being there, they got some good people, and especially because Marva's trying to look for like secret tunnels to bring the rebels in, which I thought was funny.
Yeah. The episode for me was it was a really good one in the way that it didn't stop the flow of the episode, jumping from set, from bit to bit, from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
It just flowed, the Cassian sections flowed. And even though there was no direct tie-ins, the fact that everything is now tying in, we've got the Bix and the Bix storyline that's now tying in with the ISB storylines, and how that's all going to progress.
Yeah, and then we also see Cyril. He's being a nuisance, but he's getting some credibility.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it was a very interesting episode. There's a lot of stuff going on, and the next few episodes are definitely going to be something to keep an eye out for, because I feel like a Prison Break is about to happen.
Yeah. It's going to be coming one way or another. That there's going to be a break.
And who are we kidding? We already know there's going to be a Prison Break.
Yes, we do.
No use pretending at this point.
Yeah.
So sorry for any of you guys watching the show for the first time. We're trying to pretend to be oblivious, but it's kind of hard. But the show's pretty good, so it's not gonna make that more exciting. It's not gonna spoil anything, promise. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode, and we will be back next week with episode 9. And we're gonna start to see some more things coming up that are gonna be leading to the final build-up, which is gonna be a lot of fun. And as always, guys, just make sure that you're looking down in the description below where we have our link tree. You can jump on Instagram where we post lots of news and a lot of fun stuff there. We have a link to our Discord where you can talk with other fans. We're trying to build up a really good community for all of us Star Wars fans to be able to talk. Also, we have our Teespring down below, which we have a bunch of cool designs that we did that I believe you guys would like. So give that a look. And then also we're affiliated with entertainmentearth.com, so be able to check out some of the cool stuff that we got there with Black Series, lightsabers, a lot of different collectibles that I'm sure you guys will find interesting. So with that, guys, may the Force
be with you
always.